Okay, in this video, I'm going to cover the difference between solving and factoring. So if we take a look at this, x squared plus 6x minus 16 equals 0 versus x squared plus 16x minus 16. So if you think of some similarities and some differences here, similarities, it's the same x squared plus 6x minus 16. Differences, this is an equation, this is an expression. An equation has an equal sign, expression does not. So that's the difference here. So I'm going to use factoring for both of these. I need two numbers that add up to 6 that multiply to negative 16. Same thing here. So those magic numbers are going to be 8 and 2. Since they add up to a positive, the bigger number is positive. So I would go through the factoring and I would end up with x plus 8 times x minus 2. Same thing here, x plus 8 times x minus 2. This would be my answer if I was just factoring. If I was solving, however, this would be equal to 0. And then I'd use something called the zero product property, which we're going to learn about today. That means if I'm multiplying two things and I get 0, either one or the other has to equal 0 or both. So here I would subtract 8 from each side. Here I would add 2 to each side. And I'd get that x can equal negative 8 or x can equal positive 2. So if we jump right in and look at a couple of examples here on page 28, please. The work that we do today is going to be specifically talking about this idea of the zero product property. And the zero product property, just a minute. The zero product property says if you're multiplying two things and getting 0, then either A is 0, the first thing is 0, the second thing is 0, or both are equal to 0. And we're going to use that, as you just saw here, in terms of factoring. The first factor equals 0, or the second factor equals 0. So we're going to set our factors equal to 0 and solve. So if we take a look at page 28, I'm going to start with question number 5. So in order to use the zero product property, the equation needs to be set equal to 0. So I'm going to add 5. So x squared minus 11x plus 24 equals 0. So I need two numbers that add to negative 11 that multiply to positive 24. So my magic numbers are 8 and 3. A negative times a negative equals a positive. So this needs to be negative 8 and negative 3. So then I'm going to go through my factoring. X squared plus 24 minus 8x minus 3x. And I'm going to find my GCF. X, negative 3. I bring the sign with it. X, remember you're taking the smaller of the two exponents because they both share the x. Minus 8. 24 is divisible by 8, so is 8. So this factors to x minus 8 times x minus 3. This is an equation, so equals 0. So the zero product property says x minus 8 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0, or both. So plus 8, x is equal to positive 8, plus 3, x is equal to positive 3. So x is going to equal 8 or x is going to equal positive 3. So question number 6, I kind of cut that off, so let me just bring that down. 7x squared plus x equals 0. So I have a binomial, so I'm looking at one of two things. Is this the difference of two perfect squares? Difference? No, because it's addition. And so it's got to be greatest common factor. So they both share an x. The smallest exponent is x to the first. So that's my greatest common factor. So 7 divided by 1 is 7. I have two x's. I'm taking 1 away. I have 1x, taking 1 away. So 1 divided by 1 is 1. It's not going to be a 0 here. Same deal, zero product property. I have one factor of x that could equal 0, or my other factor of 7x plus 1 could equal 0. minus 1, divide by 7. So those are my factors, x equals 0 or x equals negative 1/7. So in all these situations, you first want to look for a greatest common factor if there is one, and then if not, continue factoring using one of the other methods. In number 7, first thing I need to do is get my equation set equal to 0. So I'm going to add 7. Then I'm going to look for a greatest common factor. 7, 14, and 7. They're all divisible by 7. So I'm going to get 7 times r squared minus 2r plus 1 equals 0. Because this is an equation and I'm dividing, I don't need to write the GCF out here. And now you might be wondering why I did it here. Oh, I did really divide that by x too. Is because this is a variable. 7 is not a variable, so I don't need to write that out there because this is an equation. So now I need numbers that add up to negative 2, that multiply to 1. We're talking 1 and 1. And because they add up to negative 2, both are negative. So now I have r squared plus 1 minus 1r minus 1r. And I'm just working on greatest common factors here. So this becomes r minus 1 times r minus 1 equals 0. Zero product property says that each factor is equal to 0. If I solve, if I add 1, r is equal to 1 or r is equal to 1. So I get the same solution twice here. And the last one, if you feel comfortable factoring, by all means, pause the video, work ahead, solve this on your own. Don't just watch me do it. I look for greatest common factor. They do not all share a d. 2, 12 is divisible by 2, 5 is not. So there's no greatest common factor. So I need to understand this that we learned about last week. I need to do 2 times negative 12, negative 24. So I need numbers that add to 5, multiply to negative 24. So my numbers are going to be 8 and 3. Since they have to add to a positive 5, it's positive 8 and negative 3. So I'm going to have 2d squared minus 12 minus 3d plus 8d. Now I'm just finding greatest common factors. 2, 3 is not divisible by 2. I take the smallest exponent for the variable. 8, 12 is not divisible by 8. 4 is the next highest factor that goes into 8. 12 is divisible by 4. Here, 2, 8 is divisible by 2. And I take the smallest exponent for the variable. 3, 12 is divisible by 3. So I bring the sign with it. So this is going to factor to 2d minus 3 times d plus 4 equals 0. And then I'm going to take the zero product property and set my factors equal to 0 and solve. Plus 3. So 2d equals 3. Divide by 2. D equals 3 divided by 2, or 1.5, minus 4. D equals negative 4. Either one of those. So at this point, what you should be able to do, you're going to take your yellow quiz that's going to be handed out to you, or already was, or it's a check of understanding, I guess, and you're going to work on question 2. Question 2 on that zero product property check of understanding. So go ahead and do that and then come back and watch the second video.